There we go. So you will need to click yes, you're happy to be here with the recording. It always says that. So, and I will pin myself if I can do that. Let me just so we don't get pictures of everybody in the top right hand corner. There we go. So welcome to this talk on managing menopause naturally. Pop any questions in the chat box, and if you're watching the recording, you can always drop me a line with questions. I'm very happy to try and answer. So you'll find the email address obviously in the bottom of the YouTube link. So talking about managing menopause naturally and really how we've changed over time. And there are lots of ways in which we've changed. One is which we talk about it more, which is good. And the other is that a lot more actually happens to us. So let me move on to the next slide. So I call this the journey from spring, our menarche, when our periods start. So when we're 13, 14, that sort of age, to autumn, which I see as menopause. Menopause is a time really to gather in the harvest, the fruits of being fertile or wrestling with fertility. Increasingly, that's a journey. And we kind of gather in the fruits of those years, and we sow seeds with those for winter. Winter is a time of sowing seeds and really kind of putting in place plans. And I think it's a winter of wisdom. And that's really what my journey, my goal is in supporting women through menopause. Is it's often a time in which we set aside that conversation with fertility, whatever it's been, and actually start to look at our life's purpose in a different way. And that can be challenging, but it can be incredible to support women into doing something, and it can be quite a surprise, doing something that they didn't know they wanted to do or they've always wanted to do. So for me, it's an amazing opportunity for transformation. It's a massive transition. There are all sorts of reasons why it's more of an issue than it used to be in terms of how we transition that. So we have, fundamentally two hormones that should be friends, and that is estrogen, which brings us to fertility. It starts our periods. It actually starts labor for us if we're pregnant. So it is an initiatory hormone. There are elements of competition with estrogen. Estrogen has us competing for the male, for fertilization, for coming into fruition. So we could see that in relation to a project. It doesn't necessarily have to be giving birth to a baby. Estrogen is needed for us to have a dynamic initiatory kind of capacity as women. Men have more of that with testosterone. We need a bit of testosterone too. Testosterone is what kind of gets us up and moving into the world. The other hormone, so estrogen and progesterone, is fundamental to us as women. And progesterone is about all sorts of things that we're going to look at, but progesterone is our feel-good hormone. It has the capacity to hold our babies. It's actually the hormone which I believe allows us to be ordered in our minds, to not obsessive compulsive disorder, but to kind of make a plan, to see into the past and therefore make a plan for the future. And we need a balance between these hormones. So, and really, a lot of how we are now is how our world can disrupt their friendship. So the friendship between estrogen and progesterone, and the kind of things in our world that can disrupt that. So I call them the stars of the show for us women. There are lots of other hormones which are really important for us, but estrogen, as I've said, is what brings us to start something. And it is dominant in the first half of our cycle. So it has another aspect, which is that it increases body fat, because in order to be fertile, if you think back to a time when we didn't have enough, when we were in a place of genuine feast or famine, either had an awful lot or we didn't have much, then we needed to be plump enough to become pregnant. And if we aren't plump enough, then we don't have the the kind of storage capacity to create baby. So we're not very far away from feast and famine. And that causes us lots of issues in the modern day world when we've got food aplenty. We've got a lot of food which is not nutriently sufficient for us. So we often need to graze over a huge amount of food in order to get the nutrients that we want when it comes to things like processed food. So, we need simply enough weight on us to create babies. So estrogen will drive us to have enough fat, and it can be quite a driver when it comes to things like gaining too much weight. And it can create a lot of issues with us, particularly when it comes to synthetic estrogen knocking about in the body. So we'll talk more about that. But progesterone, as you can see on the right-hand side, has lots of amazing, it's very underplayed progesterone in the current conversation. So it's got lots of amazing benefits for us. It elevates our mood. We feel good when the progesterone is running as it should be in the body. It increases bone density. So much talk about, if you've got an issue with your bones, it's because your estrogen's dropped off. It's also because your progesterone's dropped off, and I'll explain why later. Helps balance too much estrogen. We live in a very estrogen dominant world. I'm going to explain that a bit. Progesterone elevates our libido. Estrogen drives us to find the male, but we need progesterone as well. And, obviously we can talk about same-sex relationships. We still need that balance, or we still need some male hormones to make baby. However, we're going to create that. So, progesterone increases our muscle mass. It literally nourishes and increases the muscle of the womb during pregnancy to hold the baby. And it also increases our muscle mass, literally to make us capable of picking up children and moving into the world. So it also decreases body fat. So you can see how it helps balance too much estrogen. Progesterone protects the brain and the heart. Estrogen has a role, but so many people are not talking about the role of progesterone and how to enhance that. It defeats fibrosis of internal and reproductive organs. So that means if we've got things like endometriosis and more specifically fibroids in a client of ours, then we need to be understanding how to increase progesterone, because what that does is it helps balance and reduce fibrotic conditions. And so if you've got somebody in your practice or your class who's got something like fibromyalgia, that is the fiber of the body, the muscle of the body, muscle, becoming painful, clumping together. So actually a huge thing for us with fibromyalgia is to enhance progesterone. So every woman that comes in with that type of pain, which can be incredibly restrictive, any of those that you're working with women will know, and it's primarily in women that we see fibromyalgia, that will know that it is really debilitating. So understanding how our hormones work can really help with conditions like this, which can increase as we get older, as we move towards menopause. So, as I've said, progesterone is dominant in a healthy pregnancy. So if you've got someone in your practice who's not able to maintain a pregnancy, they've got pregnant, but they keep having miscarriages and they can't maintain a pregnancy, we need to look at how to enhance progesterone above all else. So how we should be, and this is easy to forget because we can have such disordered cycles. So if someone's bleeding more frequently than 28-day cycle, then we've got an issue, and we should be able to come into balance. And those 13 cycles, we have a year, 28-day cycle, 13 cycles a year, are often in time with the moon. So as women get more healthy, they may find that they bleed at the moon or at no moon. And we may find, any of you that live with other women will see that that might be the case, that you get bleeding in time with your housemates. So, and I think, and you won't get male doctors saying this necessarily, but I think we should only have a 3 to 4 day healthy bleed. and that a bleed shouldn't be spotting beforehand, and it shouldn't be spotting afterwards, and we shouldn't be having spotting between the periods. All of those situations show that we need to bring the body into balance, and there's lots we can do. And so if someone's struggling with heavy periods, encourage them to see a naturopath, a homeopath. And there's lots of other things that we can do. But these situations are likely to increase with time as we move towards menopause. So we can see cycles getting longer, shorter, bleeds varying in length, periods becoming heavier, the fibroids growing and multiplying. Less common to see polycystic ovaries as we get older. That's usually something that we experience when we're younger. And another condition is endometriosis. Endometriosis has lots of pain between the periods. It has huge pain as you build up to the period, because the womb lining, the endometrium, is now growing outside the womb. So it might be growing outside the womb itself, it might be growing on ovaries, it might be growing on the cervix, it might be attaching to the bowel, it might be that a woman has previously had an operation, laparoscopy, anything from laparoscopy, which is quite a small incision, upwards to a common one would be if you've had your appendix removed. So any abdominal surgery might mean that scar tissue is causing tension, tightness, and that the endometrium is being pulled towards that scar tissue. So for women with endometriosis, you can get a lot of clumping together of scar tissue, the endometrium growing outside the womb, and it can be incredibly painful because the hormones are still feeding that endometrial lining wherever it is in the body, and that pain is going to be going on because that tissue is sitting where it shouldn't be. So I hope that makes sense. Endometriosis, a lot of pain, a lot of discomfort, and can really affect the digestive system. So you'll get women with a lot of cramping, maybe before the stool, might get a lot of disordered IBS type symptoms tied in with the womb pain. So lots of support for that. And I believe we should have a 3 to 4 day ovulation with 5 healthy signs that we're ovulating. The temperature dips, we feel like sex a bit more. Our cervix is actually in a different position. It's actually in a more favorable position inside the body for contact. And the cervix itself becomes more open, softer. The actual cells change. So if you have a woman who's had a cervical cell, an irregular cell change, she's got an irregular smear, then do encourage her to have a second smear, a second opinion, because those cells change throughout our cycle. So if you just popped in, put yourself on mute, just so we don't get any background noise, thanks. And, I believe we should have, shiny eyes, shiny hair, fresh breath, be alert, kind, caring, and wise, with a healthy appetite for life, love, family, friends, and our life's path. And all of those things can really be off kilter as we move towards menopause. And we may always have had these problems. And so there's loads we can do. So the goal is growing old gracefully with wisdom, patience, clarity, and insight, which can seem a long off goal when you're going through perimenopause and you're insanely irritable, but we can get there. So in a lot of the time, as you've heard, we're talking about synthetic hormones versus the real deal. So this was my avatar in one of those Facebook quizzes. And she looks pretty cheesed off, actually. So I often talk about this, and you may have attended other talks and workshops with me. I've got a few that I've done where I talk about our toxic timeline, the 20th and 21st century timeline, all of which contributes to wonky hormones. And as we move towards menopause, we see more of this. So going right from 1910 and the 1940s, when we were still using mercury and arsenic-based drugs to deal with sexually transmitted diseases. We hadn't yet invented antibiotics, which of course have their own issues. They didn't come along till the 1930s. And you'll see that in the 1930s, I mentioned that we had a lot of sugar. I've got a couple of amazing old recipe books where I'd say 7/8 of the recipe book is sugar-based cakes and biscuits. There's a small section at the back of how to do vegetables. But we had a lot of sugar in the 1930s. It was new, it was exciting, it was cheap, it was cheaper, it was available. And also at some point it was decided that fats were a demon and sugar was king. I think that came a little bit later, but from the 1930s onwards, sugar formed a mainstay, and that disorders our blood sugar. When our blood sugar is disordered, we don't make progesterone well. So we need to balance our blood sugar to make that feel-good hormone. And then we invented antibiotics, which of course wreck the microbiome, the gut flora, and they create imbalance. And if we don't have the right gut flora, and I'm going to mention a couple of these, if we don't have the right gut flora, then we're not going to draw up nutrients sufficiently, and we're going to get wonky hormones. We invented fridges, which means we stopped fermenting food. Fermented foods, of course, increase that biodiversity in the gut. And Freud came along and told us to gaze at our navel, and that it was all our own fault. And so we totally ignored the rest of the 20th and 21st century, when we had exposure to pesticides, which mimic our hormones, phthalates, which leach substances into our food, plastics do the same, food colorings, chemicals, etc., all of which contribute to disordered hormones. So we have a lot of 20th and 21st century stuff to unpack to create balanced hormones. And then we get to more recent stuff like the role of glyphosate, which is a particular pesticide which is used in the farming industry hugely, has lots of functions, but that really disorders some of the glands in the body, primarily the thyroid. So if you've got a woman in your practice with thyroid issues, that's sluggishness, chilliness, constipation, slowness, maybe feeling depressed before the periods, maybe feeling very chilly before the periods, you know, see change in body temperature going from warm to cold. You know, these kind of things can happen in perimenopause, and certainly happened for me. Then we're questioning, is it the thyroid? You know, maybe we need to go and have a test. We can talk about blood tests. We can talk about the different types of tests to detect hormonal change. And then at the end there, 2020, we rolled into a time of dodgy drugs. And I don't mean recreational drugs, although they can cause issues, but I mean because of Brexit and because of change in finance, we may find that women who are going along quite nicely on an HRT or a thyroid medication are suddenly having issues because the quality of the drug has changed. Their doctor has swapped their drug for a cheaper version or a more readily available version. And I'm seeing this quite a lot in clients. And questionable supplements, there's a lot of rubbish on the market. We can be taking in a lot of stuff like magnesium stearate, for instance, which is difficult for us to digest and is just a filler. What magnesium stearate does, and some of the other additives to supplements do, is they mean that the product flows more easily into their capsules. The only reason it's there is so that the product that you need flows more easily into the capsules. So I choose to work with companies that don't use that, and it takes them 5 times as long to fill their capsules. But that means that I'm not taking in magnesium stearate, and neither are my clients or any of the other fillers, you know. So we need to do quite a lot of research, or perhaps work in collaboration with somebody who's already done the research for us. I like doing that, to come to a truly, you know, a truly great referral for our clients. And finally, 5G, what's that doing to us? We're just about to find out. So how we live now, as you've heard, is too much estrogen and not enough progesterone. And see, these are some of the things that happen to us, you know. So I just did an Instagram live about falling hair, you know, because somebody asked me about that. And one of my first signs of hormonal change of my thyroid being low in perimenopause was falling hair. I'd brush my hair and I'd be like, oh my God, she was brushing my hair and there would be loads of hair, and I'd take it out of my hairbrush and I just I put it into a clump and stuffed it in a bag because I was so freaked out. I was like, I'm losing my hair. What's going on? I had no idea what was going on, because perimenopause, even though I went through that, how old am I now? By 8 years ago, I think my period stopped. Say 7 or 8 years ago, but maybe 5 years prior to that, I started to lose clumps of hair. I don't think I even knew what the word perimenopause was. So we're now talking about this a lot more. So falling hair, I mentioned PCOS is actually too much estrogen. That's not something we see too much around menopause, but it can happen. Women can get cysts. They can get cysts blow up at menopause. And while that might not be polycystic ovary syndrome, it's certainly something going on with cysts and the ovaries. So obviously you can come back and look at this. So I'm not going to go through everything. We now have 34 symptoms officially associated with menopause. Interestingly, and I've talked about this quite a bit, hot flushes only affect 50% of women. Now, is that because the other 50% of women like me didn't go to their doctor and say, oh, I've got flushes, what can I do? Or is it, I think for a lot of these things, we don't have a true reading. A lot of these are news. I didn't know that burning tongue was an issue. I went through a period where I had my mouth was quite sore. And I got quite a lot of, I got some ulcers, a lot of soreness and stuff going on in my mouth for a few months. I took a homeopathic remedy, homeopaths in the room. I took Staphylos aureus, which helped it clear. Lots of solutions for it. I'm just working with a lovely shaman from Mexico with a phenomenal product, which is an oral spray that I'm thinking of importing, which has anti-inflammatory properties. So we're looking to bring down where we've got heat in the system, burning tongue, a lot of the digestive issues like nausea and heartburn show this disordered heat in the system. Obviously we can have hot flushes. Sleep issues. I spoke to a much older woman, she's post-menopause by about 15 years earlier on today, and she's had sleep issues since menopause. Now she had a lot of hot flushes in her menopause and the sleep issues, and the sleep issues have persisted. So that's what I'm helping her sort out. But if I'd got to her at menopause, I would be looking at helping her balance liver function. So insomnia, night sweats, hot flushes, sleep disorders show us that we need to balance the liver energy. So often what happens to us shows us an organ that needs some support. So memory loss, I would associate with the liver. Brain fog, I would associate with the liver. Poor concentration, I would associate with a bit of nourishment for the kidneys. So other things, I'll say sorry, because there's even more of these symptoms. There's 34, actually, there's 3 or 4 more that I would include. Herpes seems to crop up a lot at menopause. Breath issues, so asthma can come up, breathing issues can come up at menopause. I've mentioned tinnitus here, ear problems, like eczema in the ears, I've seen come up at menopause. So, quite a lot of stuff that isn't in this list of 34. And when I'm talking to a woman, when I'm taking a case, and if you've been working with a woman for a long time, you'll see the changes over time. But if I'm taking someone's case for the first time and they're coming about menopausal stuff, I'll be looking right back through their life. How was adolescence? When did your period start? Did the cycle stay the same? At what point did it change? Have you had pregnancies? Did you breastfeed your babies? How were your pregnancies? I spoke to somebody yesterday who's had 3 children, and I recognized that really nothing had been right since the birth of the 3rd baby. That was a long time before her coming to see me, aged, I think she was 50. And so 20 years of things not being right with her periods. And here she is in peri-menopause to menopause. Synthetic hormones, have we had them in our life? Much younger women than me. So women in their sort of 30s to 40s, chances are they've used quite a lot of things like the morning after pill, which is a massive dollop of synthetic hormone. And many times women's periods have been upset since having the morning after pill. And libido, how is it for you? Not the easiest question to ask a new client, but we are more frank these days. We do talk about these things more, so that's good. And I'm asking these questions which reflect that 20th and 21st century timeline. What do you eat? What do you put in your body? What do you put on your body? What's your environment like? These are the kind of things that it's very easy for those of you that are teachers, that are working with women, to start to learn about. You know, if you're a fitness instructor, what are the women in your care putting on their body when it comes to deodorant? You know, if we're putting stuff that is full of parabens on our body, it predisposes us to issues with the closest glandular tissue, which is the breast. You know, and when they analyze cancerous breast tissue, is full of parabens. You know, so there's a lot in our environment which we need to shift and change. And those of you that know me well will know that I love to talk about things like skin brushing, which is a wonderful, very simple, cheap, low-cost way to help cleanse and detox. So is the breath. You know, if you're doing breath work, so certain yoga positions, so are some of the primal movements that we can do in the fitness world. You know, so looking at a holistic approach is fundamental. It's not just homeopathy, it's not just flower essences, it's not just yoga. You know, I was really shocked actually, and I went to a yoga class with a very well-known yoga teacher quite a few years back, and it was a small class, it was a focus session, and I was really quite shocked by the frank talk about taking an awful lot of mainstream medication for every ailment. It's like, oh, you've got a muscle injury, do this. Oh, you've got I was like, wow, it really wasn't what I expected. And so, you know, we tend to trust when we move into the holistic field that we're going to get a holistic approach. There's a lot of education that needs to go on amongst us, and that's really why I'm doing these talks, because, you know, I want to encourage you into collaboration, into working with each other, into finding like-minded colleagues to support our clients efficiently, because menopause is a multifaceted situation. You know, it needs, I think, a holistic approach. So you can see from looking at this list that, you know, a lot of it will be dealing with things like stress levels and the life that we lead, and what is it that we can trim away in order to have a clearer space to move into this next stage in our lives. So I mentioned the liver there, and it does have a bit of a starring role as an organ when it comes to the menopause, because it is most involved in breaking down hormones. So our pituitary gland, the master gland, is stimulating everything else to produce that one last surge to release an egg, because we are primed for the survival of the species. So we're primed to create the situation where we could have a baby for quite a long time. What's different about us compared to other species is we don't do that until the end of our lives. You know, there's us and very few other species that pause the fertility and go into a long period of time when we are no longer fertile. It's us and a few sea creatures. And so why do we have menopause? What's it all about? What is it all about to put down the babies, to put down the fertility conversation and move into another space? What is our role? And a lot of women ask that, and it can be a real challenge when you come into menopause and suddenly you suffer a crisis of confidence. And you're saying, well, what's my function here? What am I doing in the world? You know, these are big questions. I certainly went through that myself. So, you know, we break down both natural and synthetic hormones. A huge part of the issue at menopause is our natural hormones drop away and we're left with the synthetic chatter stuff that we need to shift. So I'm also a big proponent of liver support mechanisms like herbal, homeopathy, nutrition, superfoods, certain exercises, lifestyle, etc., which helps us clear these synthetic hormones out of the system and to detox from those and other 20th and 21st century toxins. So the other organs that are primarily involved in terms of balance, our kidneys, adrenals, and of course our ovaries. And these have been doing a lot of work for a long time. And we're likely to be going through stress at menopause. You know, often you've got teenagers in the house who are doing exams. You might have an older relative that you need to look after. You might be taking on new roles at work. You know, kidneys, adrenals, and ovaries tend to get, to put it bluntly, a bit knackered. So they're going to need nurturing. They're going to need restoring. And for me at menopause, peri-menopause, I would go into an active yoga class, wanting the wonderful benefits of it, and come out completely stressed and in overdrive because it woke up my adrenals too much. So I learned after a period of time to go into restorative yoga, so much better for me. So, you know, we may need to change our practice. And these particular organs relate to other organs that I've just alluded to. The lungs, you know, I talked about breathing issues, talked about asthma, the heart, the liver, the ears, the knees, the bones, and the teeth. So if we've got problems with the bones or we've got knee issues, it may well be that we need to look at the health of kidneys, adrenals, and ovaries and restore at that level in order to make knees, bones, and teeth stronger. So before I go on to what I call the Holy Trinity, I'm just going to stop the screen share and ask Vicky to shout out with some of our questions.
There's a few in here now. So Rochelle says she's had hot flushes and 2-hour sleep stints for 20 years since menopause. I've tried everything. Any suggestions?
Yeah, have you, and I know you would have done because you're a homeopath, Rochelle, how much cleansing and detoxing have you done?
Yeah, I mean, I do Tom Jansen's seminars, and I've been through all the detoxes.
Yes. Homeopathic?
Yeah, homeopathic detoxes he suggested, yes.
Yeah. So how much have you got into naturopathic stuff, superfoods, skin brushing, looking at heavy metals?
Skin brushing, looking at heavy metals, no.
Yeah. So I would, there's something in your system that is sticking. So just for those of you who are also listening in, I know Rochelle is a homeopath. So when you know someone's been working in homeopathy for a long time, you also know that they've done a lot of stuff in that field. And what we're looking for the homeopaths in the room is dyscrasias. We're looking for something which is sitting in the system, which is stuck in the system, and we need to clear out. And some of those things can be quite difficult to clear. And this is not about Rochelle, but it may be about myself, or it kind of isn't actually, because I couldn't afford it back in the day. But those of you that have studied the recreational drugs will know or may know that, for instance, cocaine leaves a residue in the liver, which is very, very difficult to shift. So you're going to have to do a lot of work to try and get that out of the system. Anything stuck in the liver is going to continue to cause us hot flushes or sleep issues. So it's not that we can't do it, but you know, it's funny, as I was prepping for today and I was blow drying my hair, you know, trying to look nice for the screen, because I've been swimming earlier and I looked a bit raggy. Cold water swimming, I didn't put that in the list actually for later, or I was thinking about that. Yeah, you know, as I was prepping, I was thinking, wow, using the hairdryer a few years ago would have just had me in a hot flush, you know, so these things should pass. And I got into doing the 10-day cleanse, which is phenomenal, on a regular basis. I did it maybe 6 times in the first year that I was introduced to it, which was during perimenopause, and I shifted a lot of stuff. I changed sleep issues fundamentally with CBD oil. That was post menopause, post a lot of remedies, post a lot of these wonderful bush flower essences, and CBD oil. 8 months on 500 milligram strength of CBD oil changed my sleep. I just slept like a baby ever since, and that's really quite incredible. So we can look at also those of you that are, if you're into Chinese medicine, homeopathy, we can be looking at the time that somebody wakes, the time of the day that somebody experiences a symptom, and we will then be looking at a certain organ. And that might relate to particular Chinese herbs, particular acupuncture points, homeopathic remedies, etc. So, when we've got something which is stuck, we need to look that bit deeper. I use a program called Core Energetics, which is very similar to a bioresonance program or bioresonance machine. And those can be very helpful to help us detect these dyscrasias, these things that are stuck in the system. I mentioned a bit later on, when I go back to the slides, I mentioned kinesiology. Kinesiology can be a really good course for us. It's muscle testing. And this can be another way of finding out what it is that's stuck in the system. So I know I haven't answered that exactly, Rochelle, but those would be sort of my thoughts about some of the places that we could go. But thank you.
I've done all the herbal stuff as well, so.
Yeah. Yeah, happy to have a chat actually off camera if you want to do that one day. Really, be up for that. So yeah, message me. Cool. Vicky?
Just going to some of them have been answered. So have a friend who has low estrogen, hot flushes and insomnia. She wants to avoid patches. Any advice? I'm also a homeopathic user and training at the moment. Any top tips other than homeopathic remedies?
Yeah, what I'll do, I'll go on to the next few slides and I'll answer that question with those. And really the reason why I started working with menopause in this way and setting up my Facebook group, actually, Vicky, if you want to find the link for that, that would be amazing to pop that in the in the chat. The reason I just started to do that really, and to create a lot of things like tips for clients, like a crib sheet, is because there are several things which are generic, which we all need to do, however menopause is for us. And so I'll cover some of those, but just to say, you can look at what are called phytoestrogens in small doses to increase estrogen. Now, phytoestrogens are plant estrogens. Xenoestrogens are synthetic estrogens, or things that are in the environment that mimic our estrogens. So you may, and a common phytonutrient would be soya. So you always go for genetically modified soya. And it might be that you eat a small amount of non-genetically modified soya, so organic soya, that you go for a small amount of organic soya 2 or 3 times a week to simply raise those estrogen levels. What you're looking out for is for hot flushes balancing, because what you don't want is to increase hot flushes. So there's lots you can do, but look at what I call the Holy Trinity first. Is a great place to start. Thanks, Vicky.
Someone's asked if cocaine lingers in the liver. Are there other party drugs that do things to other organs, stay around in other organs?
Yeah, wreck your brain. What do you want? Yeah. Ketamine. Some of the new stuff that's coming out is horrendous. I only said that about cocaine because there's studies on it, and and it's well documented. I remember my son asking me that question. He was in his teens, and he said, "So, Mum, what does dope actually do to you?" And it's all subtle. Most of them give the liver a hard time, and I would say that dope, cannabis, it traditionally would affect the liver most. Sluggishness, feeling not getting going the next morning, etc. We could talk about a lot of things. So I would say cannabis would mostly, but now that we feed it with growth factor hormones to create, super beasts, it affects the brain, and you see this, you see the cognitive function. And I just said cognitive function and liver are very connected. So foggy brain, not thinking straight, but we're really seeing, cannabis now affect the nervous system, tissue, the brain function, really quite fundamentally. And by that, I mean skunk, and that's been going on for quite a long time now. My son's 32 now. He asked me that question when he was in adolescence, but when he was 16 and he was doing GCSE, so 16 years ago, he said, I've got mates who won't, if I don't get them out of the house by 6 p.m. in the evening, we're not going to get them out, because they just get too sort of paranoid and scared about it. Anyway, so, I think it would be a great study. Really, it's a whole other webinar, which would be quite fun. I quite fancy that one. So watch out for that one.
June asks, which supplement companies do you recommend?
Good question. Yeah, I really like Aquasource. I've worked with them since 1996. So that's 25 years. I've taken their products myself. And, they've been recognized, for instance, by the Vegan Society for 21 years. They, as I've said, that was the company I referred to, that don't use fillers and binders. So it takes them 5 times as long to fill their capsule, which means that the products are more expensive, but you're getting more bang for your bucks, So this is what we're looking at. There's a lot of, I'm not keen on the companies which are now owned by the big corporates either, because they sort of subtly change the recipe, reduce the potency of products, etc. The 10-day cleanse that I talked about is called Purium in the States and Platinum in Europe. I tend to work with quite a lot of multi-level marketing companies simply because they can deliver great quality direct to your doorstep, and that doesn't have to sit on the health food shelves health food shop shelves for 6 months with fillers and binders in it to keep it there. So there's lots of reasons for me. If you're looking at a multi-level marketing company, find out who the CEO is, find out who the owner is, and find out if they are interested in the integrity of their products. And if they are, start asking them questions. If you can't see the ingredients list of any product, forget it, as far as I'm concerned. I want to know what's in it. And more than that, my clients don't like it if I start to refer to things which aren't good quality, So yeah, those are a couple of the companies that I work with regularly. I look at some other companies for hardware, things like water filtration, sauna, home infrared saunas, that kind of thing, So yeah, if you've got a supplement company that you like, you pop it in the chat box. Cytoplan's pretty good. That's the other one that's around. Some of the Nutri is good. I like Wild Nutrition. Quite like Terra Nova. Yeah, just make sure that the label, isn't too long. The ingredients list. Vicky.
A few more. The name of the 10-day cleanse, that's Puritan, wasn't it? You said
Purium. It's called
Purium.
Purium in the States and Platinum in the UK and Europe. What I suggest you do is drop me a line if you're particularly interested in anything. Vicky, if you could pop my email in the chat box, just in case when I send something out, it sort of looks a bit generic where it comes from.
Any thoughts on gum issues? I see so much gum disease in perimenopausal friends.
Yeah, great question. So a really good supplement for the gums is CoQ10. So that's regularly available. CoQ10, you want to take about 50 micrograms a day, and do that for a month to 2 months. Go back to your dentist and ask him how your gums are.
And there was one more. How can I deal with constant bloating as I regularly look 5 months pregnant and it's getting me down?
Yeah, love, a good question. And I'm with you. Let's go back to the screen share if Zoom will let me. And we will talk about exactly that. So you can all see that, can't you? Apparently you can. Participants can now see my application. Fantastic. Do love Zoom's notifications. So this is what I call the Holy Trinity. And I am about to talk about those. And these are the tops of some lily of the valley leaves that I made into a flower essence. So essential fatty acids and your hormones. So the Holy Trinity is 3 nutritional supplements and or nutritional elements, I'm going to say, because it's pretty broad. Take a daily essential fatty acid because these help with the transportation of prostaglandins around the body. These are our hormone messengers. And they're good for all sorts of things. A good essential fatty acid should mean that your skin, hair, and nails improves in its quality. So any dryness of the body should improve when you take a good essential fatty acid. That supports all sorts of systems. That's why they're called essential, heart and circulatory system. So the gums, for instance, we just talked about, very fine capillaries. And essential fatty acids would have some kind of role in nourishing the heart and all of the circulatory system. More specifically is something like the CoQ10. So there are many, many studies on essential fatty acids, and they help the liver in its function. The liver can become sluggish and literally dehydrated. So the further north we live in the world, the colder the climate, the more fat we need in our diet. And as we've said, fats have been demonized. So fresh food is the best source for essential fatty acids to do this work, but we tend to cook and process our food. So, I encourage you where you can to go raw, to increase the raw foods in your diet. And that way you will simply get more essential fatty acids from the raw foods. And, I always say to people, go organic, get an organic fruit and veg box delivery scheme. They are more nutritious. I get better reports from clients than I do from organic food from the supermarket. So, fruit and veg are meant to look different shapes and sizes. They're not all meant to look uniformly the same. So I'm a little bit dubious sometimes of the hydroponically grown organic food in the supermarket. It's okay, but even better is to get a box delivery scheme. Riverford, Abel and Cole, Farm Around, there's loads of them. And if there isn't one in your area, then you can start one up. I'm going to say something actually that I forgot to say right at the beginning. If you want to pop your name in the chat box to win a free bunch of flowers, that bunch of flowers behind me is from a company called Freddie's Flowers, and every month they give me free bunches to give away. Great little scheme there to promote their business. But it just occurred to me, every single Zoom I do, there's always a lovely bunch of flowers in the background, and that was something that I treated myself to in menopause, to kind of remind myself to smile, to kind of give myself a gift every week. And I go to this particular company. So if you'd like to win a free bunch of flowers, I've got 2 to give away. Pop your name in the chat box and I'll choose those tomorrow. So oils, good old avocados, which of course we're worried about being over-farmed, but there's lots of places where we can get essential fatty acids and good quality oils from in our diet. Cold pressed seed oils, grass-fed butter, coconut oil, fish, go carefully with your fish. Sustainable, shiny, silver, small shellfish are good, I believe. You'll get different opinions on that. You might want to look at where they come from. Essential fatty acid supplements are best in a liquid form. So I work with a couple that I really like. But you'll find that hemp seed oil and evening primrose oil are particularly good for menstrual issues. So essential fatty acids, And when it comes to bloating and discomfort, we need to increase fermented foods in our diet and do that slowly initially. You want to be thinking about a tablespoon of ferments in some, fermented vegetables. So here I've got, unfortunately, this company Source Foods isn't around anymore, but they were producing lovely organic live miso. I have found another company, it's called Navi Organics. I don't know if you want to find that, Vicky. It's Navi, Navi Organics. I love their raw organic miso. Apple cider vinegar. I start my day now with a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar in warm water. It's having a great effect on my digestion. I've never done it before. But when I was away because I didn't particularly like it, actually, it feels too acidic. But when I was away visiting a friend recently, she had the Aspel one with raw honey in it, and it was really palatable. And I'm doing that every day, and I think it's really improved my digestion. I think I'm less bloated and I'm not particularly bloated these days, but this bloatedness before the periods, this bloatedness that goes on can have all sorts of causations. So it could be eating too fast, it could be eating cold foods, it can certainly be not having enough of what we call prebiotics, digestive enzymes, and probiotics. So prebiotics serve the upper part of our digestive system. Probiotics tend to serve the lower part of our digestive system. So prebiotics is another word for digestive enzymes. We can eat certain foods which help us digest our meal. So something like artichoke, asparagus, radish, these foods are traditionally eaten first so that they help us produce digestive enzymes. We produce digestive enzymes when we chew our food efficiently. So if we eat too fast, we might get bloated if we don't chew our food to produce the digestive enzymes. If we are stressed, we don't produce digestive enzymes well. So there's lots of things that can interfere with that upper digestion. So things like heartburn, nausea, burping, feeling bloated very soon after eating would be upper digestive issues. Lower digestive, where we get bloated sort of a little bit longer after eating, or we feel bloated all the time, or we feel bloated before the period, is the lower bowel. And we usually need to increase the ferments and maybe certain targeted probiotics. So I'm going to mention one of those in a minute. The eating fermented foods helps us absorb nutrients efficiently. So when we ferment vegetables, we increase the bioavailability of the nutrients that are in those vegetables. So we take some raw cabbage and we eat it, and we will absorb a certain amount of nutrients out of it. If we ferment that, we will absorb much more nutrients. It's not that there's more nutrients there, it's that we make it more bioavailable. And every culture has its cultures, and we stopped using these in our culture, as I say, around the 1930s when we invented fridges. So we have yogurt from the Mediterranean, kefir from the Caucasus, vili from Finland, labneh from the Middle East. These are all fermented milk products. And when we ferment that, we ferment the lactose, the sugar gets eaten and by the fermentation process, and it makes it much easier for us to digest. So you'll see studies which prove that kefir can reduce cholesterol. Cholesterol can be raised at menopause. So things like kombucha, kefir, vinegar, as I mentioned, wine, beer also are naturally fermented products. So many women who find it difficult to tolerate wine or alcohol during menopause can change perhaps to a natural wine and find that a smaller amount of natural wine is much more palatable. So these are the kind of things that I talk about more extensively in my courses, workshops and masterclasses. So we can make sourdough, we can make our own, we can ferment our own vegetables. Many women, interestingly, become sensitive to certain foods at menopause, so allergies can be an issue. And many women, I'll say, go over to having sourdough and avoid yeast. Yeast can be not a great product, can cause quite a lot of allergy, actually. So a sourdough, which is fermented sourdough starter and made with organic flour, can be a completely different beast to commercially produced bread. So bloating can really change through attending to your diet. Even things which we eat familiarly and we might put into the bad food bracket, like chocolate and coffee, are all derived from ferments. So the fermentation process is very old to us. It's what we did to help preserve food and to increase the bioavailability of food. It also means, of course, that we drank fermented food, or we ate fermented fruit and felt a bit tipsy. So it might be that it contributes to expanding our minds as well. So there are lots of reasons to enhance our gut health, obviously, in menopause, and I've talked about some of those. But there are some great studies about particularly the bifidus probiotics, the bifidus flora. They're called bifidus longi and bifidus brevi. There's also bifidus infantis that babies need. So if we've got a colicky baby, usually bifidus infantis will really help. We can take a probiotic to have a specific action, and bifidus and the B vitamin helps us absorb B vitamins. B vitamins are fundamental to stress and the nervous system health. So we can use these probiotics, this gut flora, in a targeted way. So we can say that bifidus helps protect against anxiety and low mood. So cholesterol levels commonly increase in menopause. You may well see low thyroid and increased or raised cholesterol. So kefir, I've mentioned, has been proven to help. There's a few other things, CoQ10 I mentioned earlier, essential fatty acids, attending to a diet. These things will help with cholesterol issues. So fermented foods, great to make your own. Magnesium is another favorite of mine. So this is the third element in the Holy Trinity. It's one of the key minerals for regeneration. And it's estimated that 80% of the Western countries, Western population, are magnesium deficient. And that is an old statistic. So, you know, virtually everybody that comes in needs magnesium. It's known as the calming mineral. You know, so for me, when I went away with a prescription from my homeopath to go and get some magnesium into my life, I was like, what? No remedy? But it just completely changed my irritability within 5 days. And I used the Better You spray oil. So it relaxes muscle, arteries, calms nerves, increases our capacity to fight infection by 300%. So if you find that you're getting colds as part of perimenopause, that you're kind of constantly getting something, may well be that you simply need to increase the magnesium. So these three elements, essential fatty acids, fermented foods, and magnesium, are absolutely key. And one of the things that, well, it helps to store up certain minerals, particularly calcium and phosphorus that bones are made out of, teeth are made out of. So if we're getting problems with this part of the body, this system, the bony system in the body, the teeth, then we need to increase magnesium in order to draw up calcium and phosphorus more efficiently from our food. Desire for chocolate is a surefire sign of magnesium deficiency because chocolate is rich in magnesium. So the goal is ultimately to balance the endocrine or the hormonal system and to let go of synthetic hormones, to clear heavy metals and other toxins or residues, dyscrasias from the system, because that will help with the heat symptoms, the hot flushes, etc. The goal also is to create space. And for many women, it's about creating personal space, learning to have that time in your life that is yours, and to create a bit of bartering power. A lot of us are yes women for the whole of our lives, and we get to menopause and need to learn to become no women in order to be a nicer person when we're saying yes. So, you know, there's a lot of wisdom, I think, to be gained, and a lot of that comes through sharing and collaborating. So here's some solutions, a lot of which I've talked about. I mentioned homeopathy, I've mentioned flower essences, and these are energy medicines. And then we can move to more material substances like the supplements, essential oils, herbs, etc., which we've talked about. So these tend to have more of a push-shove effect. They will stop something happening, or they will make something happen, much like mainstream medicine. That's their action. Whereas homeopathy, flower essences, and other CAM therapies are more energy medicines. So things like reflexology, Reiki, craniosacral therapy, etc. All of these have a role in supporting women in menopause. And we may, as I've said, need to change the kind of movement that we engage in. You know, many women will say to me, my weight's piling on, I'm exercising like mad, what's going on? And actually what we need to do is restorative. We need to nourish those kidneys, adrenals, and ovaries. Talking therapy, you know, said confidence can take a hit. You know, there may be some talking, writing space, which is really, you know, really useful. Writing has been proven to help our mental state. So some lifestyle changes, letting go. You know, it's a time to let go of stuff rather than accumulate. Lots of women experience that. So it's about developing grounding practices that work, because we're going to need those for the post-menopausal period. So there's some looking at our life's path and relationships involved. And, you know, finally, it can be a bit sort of dismal, I think, when we look at some of those symptoms, but it's important to remind ourselves that our bodies are amazing. We have incredible powers of resilience. The body knows how to heal itself. And while we might be born with a strong or a weak constitution, there's lots we can do to strengthen what we were born with, or to strengthen what has become weak, just as we can also weaken it. It can be a time when we need to pay back. So, you know, for me, I think, I always like to say, you can become vibrant and connected. And I feel more like that through the work that I've done and I'm doing than perhaps I've ever felt in my life, which is amazing. And my homeopath, Robert Davidson, would always say to us as students, you know, that homeopathy takes us to a place of choice. And the choice is ours then to move forward into deeper healing. And in many ways, I think menopause is like that as well. It is a choice to make some changes to benefit not just ourselves, but those around us and the world around us as well. So beyond this, I'm going to do a 2-part webinar series. I'm just going to ask Vicky to pop that into the chat. So that's the 30th of September and the 7th of October. So that's two 2-hour webinars. And we're going to look at perimenopause in the early part and true menopause in the second part, the bit when we change, the bit when we're really going through the transition. And that is that year or 2 years when things are really changing. And of course, post-menopause is when we've done a year of no periods. And I'll look at that another time. But this webinar, this webinar series that's coming up on Masterclass is about this perimenopause and true menopause. So any questions, Vicky? Any last questions?
Look, got all the names in there for you to pick.
Fantastic. I'll download the chat.
I posted that in seconds before you mentioned it. So
brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, we would.
Great minds think alike.
Yeah. Recent item was about. Oh, I'm sorry. Pure. We did that. 10-day care. Would you recommend water filtration systems or?
Yeah, I use the Nikon system as a countertop system, and under the sink system that's good. I'll make a note and send you the systems that I currently use.
And on that, someone's asked for what's that receptacle for, like carrying water out and about.
Yeah,
well.
good. Yeah, cool. So there's Nikon, Berkey, and an under the sink one, which is called, I should have to look it up, something about the spring. I remember the company. But I'll send you links for those in an email tomorrow or Saturday.
That was it. Everyone else has answered all the questions that all the
cool,
little
fantastic. Excellent. So I just we put a couple of other things in there. If you're interested in other workshops that I do, I mentioned things like I've done a couple of workshops with the Australian bushflower essences, then do have a look at the workshops link. There's a few there. I think 6 on that link. And then if any of you are getting things like, I didn't actually mention the Better You magnesium spray, but if you don't have your own discount code with the natural dispensary, feel free to use mine for a 15% discount. So that's not on that won't be on the Platinum or the Aquasource products. You won't see those there, but things like some of the other ranges, Cytoplan, Better You, these bushflower essences, etc. You can get all those at Natural Dispensary. So, but as a practitioner, if you're a practitioner and you're listening in, join Natural Dispensary and you'll get a really great personal discount, and you'll get your own discount code you can give to your clients. So it's just a really nice thing to be able to do, I think. Any last minute questions?
Sorry, my children were noisy, so I muted it. Someone asked again about carrying water out and about.
Yeah.
And someone's asked metabolics, iconic. Oh, right. So just a comment, I can't even pronounce it. Ionic magnesium is really good.
Yes. Yeah. Great. Yeah, no, thank you. So ionic elements where we've got the minerals in suspension are great, and I work with a couple of those as well. So yeah, excellent. VDU, still wondering what visual, oh gosh, what does it stand for? Visual display, visual display unit, isn't it? i.e. your laptop. I don't know what the question was around that. Was there a question around that? No, it's on my timeline, isn't it? It's on my timeline. Yeah. So these things are supposed to be emitting loads of radiation we don't need either. There's a company which I'll just put in here if you want to look them up. They are called AirTech. You can also get energy dots. Energy dots you can buy from Natural Dispensary. So they are little stickers that you put on your phone, your laptop, etc., to help sync the radiation. I'm probably going to do a webinar about this waveform radiation, but I've got a lovely bit of shungite between me and my Wi-Fi. The black stones and crystals are particularly good to protect or absorb negative Wi-Fi waveform radiation, etc. It's a kind of pet topic of mine. I love talking about the homeopathic remedies around that, so I will do that. But AirTech is a company which has some kit for the house as well as for the laptop and the phone. I think there's a pretty good, it's an American company, so I'm just waiting for mine to arrive, so I'll keep you posted. But I think things like protecting ourselves against waveform radiation and filtering the rubbish out of the water are topics that we definitely need to be constantly researching. So, something that I talk about now, I'm going to be researching as time goes on. I'm always open to a new conversation. So I went to this wonderful festival a couple of weeks ago called the Medicine Festival. Absolutely fantastic. And they had someone on site who was filtering the water, and it tasted fantastic. We could all go and refill our water, obviously. And I went and had a chat with him, and he's got a really great under the sink filter system. It's 3 filters, very good value to go in. And I'm in the process of chatting to him because I just thought, I want that. I want something under the sink that has that level of filtration. The Nikon filter is a countertop system, which is a bit of a pain because you have to fill it up, you know, from the top, and it comes out the bottom. The same with the Berkey. You may be able to get a Berkey that you plumb in. And anyway, so he can plumb this in under the sink for around £300, and it's got incredible filtration. And we are going to need that. You know, there's a conversation at the moment on our homeopathy friends thing. Are we going to get the graphene oxide in our water? What do we do about getting that out of the equation, please? So, you know, I'm very interested to see what's going forward. And someone's just popped a remedy there. Thanks in the chat. Helios, one of our homeopathic pharmacists, do a remedy for protection from radiation if you're sitting in front of a screen all the time. And very interestingly, I mentioned the core energetics program that I use for my work. For the last 2 to 3 weeks, it has been showing a remedy for a number of clients that I don't normally see showing up. And that remedy is the Narayani Atomic Radiation Mix 4550M. So the Narayani remedies are combination remedies that I use a lot in practice. I've also done a masterclass in those that you can see in my workshops link. But that particular remedy, atomic radiation, has been showing up for a lot of clients. So I notice pattern. You know, I run my program for around 25 clients a week. And when I start to see a remedy like that show up for 6 clients in a week for several weeks running, I know that there's a lot more atomic radiation around. Is it a cloud that's floated over from something that's gone on in the Middle East? You know, like, anyway, let's not get into the whole other webinar. Or is it that, you know, our 5G is being switched on? Who knows? But these are conversations that we need to have, and it's interestingly, it's the things that we can't see. So what's in the waveform radiation? Are we getting more of it? What's in the water? What's in the food? These are the kind of things that we need to pay attention to, not just for menopause, but for, you know, our clients and ourselves in general. So good, we run over as always. So much to say. The Narayani remedy is atomic radiation mix 45, and that is a 50M. How did I come up with the need of it? I just see it repeated, like I've seen it 6 times this week for clients. I never see, oh, thank you, Rochelle, for waving that around. Excellent. So this is for the homeopaths in the room. We're talking about a particular remedy because we are looking to mitigate the effects of waveform radiation. So thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for your time. We've got a lot of people on tonight, which is great. I really appreciate it, and I hope you got a lot out of that. And if you want to join the course, it is early bird until midnight on Sunday the 12th, so take advantage of that. Otherwise, we will be starting on the 30th of September. Enjoy your evening. Thank you. Bye.